Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you're all having a good day. I'm having a great one. We are back here in the Survival Guide world with all of these frog lights, which I made a note in the edit of the last episode. I forgot to put them all in my inventory at once because we collected them all individually, but if we hold them all together, my inventory is kind of full of stuff right now. There we go. Something I completely forgot to do in the previous episode is get the With Our Powers Combined advancement for having all the frog lights in my inventory, and I can't believe we actually got them thanks to the little green guy over there. We have one verdant frog light to our name. But with all that messing around with the nether and the magma cube, I ended up getting it with a skeleton skull and a few other bits and pieces, all kind of gumming up my inventory right now. So I'm going to stick all of the frog lights in my inventory. For now, we're going to leave the frog lights alone. We're probably going to come back with a farm design for them at some point in future. But for now, I just want to stash these in my storage system somewhere where I know the frog lights are going to be safe and secure. And you know what? I have a feeling we're going to need 3 separate chests for them. So we can have verdant frog lights here. We can have the pearlescent frog lights there. And we can have the ochre frog lights alongside them right there. And that at least will cover the fact that we've got mud and mud bricks to come in here, but I kind of want to get some more frog lights, and we're probably going to grab a whole bunch of them. Unfortunately, I don't even have a second verdant frog light to fill in that gap there, much less place them in the actual chests, and for now, I'm not going to bother about filtering any of these. Mostly, I just want to be able to fill up this area with 119 blocks, and seeing as we've got the mangrove stuff over here already, it makes sense to have the frog lights in here too. But 119 has more to discover outside of the realm of blocks, and today we're going to look for the game's newest utility mob. If you think about it, there are a few mobs in the game that really count as utility mobs, things like snow golems and iron golems, maybe even horses and mules, although they kind of count more as passive mobs than anything else. But there is a brand new addition to the ranks of utility mobs in the game, one that feels a little bit supernatural, and we have encountered it before, although not up close. Today we're going to go and rescue some Allays. And I spotted my first Allays in this mountain range to the north of the ocean that contains our guardian farm, over here at the Pillager Outpost. As we come to a land in here, there are a couple of cages around the outside of some of these Pillager Outposts, and you won't see these absolutely everywhere because Pillager Outposts tend to generate with a few different things around the outside. You'll notice there's a tent over there that's got some pumpkins and a crafting table in it. Sometimes they will have iron golems in these cages. Sometimes they'll have a little firing range with pumpkins on hay bales as a kind of like scarecrow style thing. And sometimes you'll notice that one of these cages has a roof made of fences on it and some little blue floating creatures trapped inside. These are Allays. They are one of the newest additions to the game. They were actually voted into the game as part of a mob vote at Minecraft Live back in 2021. And now that they've been added to the game, these little critters are actually quite interesting and special, but in order to make use of them, we kind of have to rescue them from their captors. The crossbow-wielding pillagers have apparently been after these things, and so we're probably going to have to act quickly if we want to break them out of their cage. They're making this wonderful, magical, musical kind of noise, and here we go. We can break them out like so, and let's give each of them one of these fences for safekeeping. Where did the other one go? There was a second one here a second ago. Okay, this one's got a fence, and that one's got a fence. Okay, now we've given them items. They should hopefully start to follow me. We're going to have to fight off a couple of the pillagers as we make their escape, but me and the Allays are headed out over this plains biome, and if I continue flying around a little bit, every so often, they should pick up a burst of speed, and they're following me. Fantastic. So once you've given an Allay an item, effectively the Allay recognizes you as its owner, or at least a friend, where it can hover around a little bit, and it will search for similar items that have been dropped within a radius of the player. For example, if I throw a couple of these fence posts on the ground over here, you'll notice the Allays are quick to try and pick them up, and there we go. They throw them to the player once they've been collected. So an Allay's job is to look for items identical to the ones that it is holding in its hands and deliver them to the player if it picks them up off the ground. We're only a few moments into the episode and already I have 2 advancements. That is a good feeling. So the Allays can also be put on leads, and I think for their safety for the moment, it's probably a good idea to attach them to leads, and that way we can make sure we can get them back to spawn, because it is quite a distance, and I'm sort of wondering if we can fly with the Allays leashed to us, considering that they can fly as well. I sort of want to give that a try. Yeah, the leads kind of broke on a block back there, and the Allays are just kind of floating around doing their thing. They tend to stick relatively close to the ground, so they're not just flying off into the sky all of the time the way bees do, but the range at which Allays will follow you is actually pretty impressive. I kind of want to give this a stress test here by flying out into the ocean and seeing if they're going to follow me at this point. No, it looks like we got away a little too quickly, but I believe there's about a 64 block radius in which the Allays will notice the player and start to track towards you. So once we get back closer to land, they're going to be a little bit more interested in following us. And it may even be that being off the ground is a problem. Like, they might find it easier to track to the player if we're standing on a solid block, in the same way that mobs who are pets will teleport to you, but only if you're standing on a solid block. Although, no, they do seem to be interested in following me if I maintain a decent gliding height. That's the real problem here, is the speed at which we're flying with fireworks gets a little bit too much for them to keep up with. But all things considered, I think the solution is going to be relatively simple. We're going to leash them both up, and we're going to hop into a boat. And hopefully, the boat should be slow enough that they'll be able to follow us, and we can head back to the ocean temple where there's a nether portal. Yeah, I think they are trying to pathfind towards solid blocks right now, because they do seem to be reaching back in the direction of land. But aside from that, the leashes seem to be holding steady. They're going to be following us quite comfortably along here. It's kind of like they're water skiing back there, or I'm dragging a couple of balloons with me. Although I'd better steer clear of the rest of the ocean monuments, because I don't really want guardians to start shooting these things out of the sky. Okay, finally having made it back to the Guardian farm, we got our nether portal right here. I'm going to try going through to the nether and see if it's possible for these two to follow me. Okay, perhaps the most incredible thing just happened. I came through and one was still attached to the lead, but it seems to have gone back through the portal. Yeah, I have no idea what happened there, and I also have no idea where my leads went. But now we're in the nether, these two should be able to follow me okay? In theory. Now, yeah, one of them was absent for a second there, but he has come back, and let's see. I probably want to break this portal just in case they fly through here, because that leads to a lush cave. Let's see if they're able to follow me, because the nether tunnel here is a little bit winding and a little bit complex, but I have a feeling that if we get far enough away, yep, this guy is following me down the tunnel, and the other one is following. Fantastic. So their pathing seems to be pretty intelligent. They're not having trouble, like, getting stuck on the other side of blocks or anything like that. The main thing I have to be wary of here is clearing my path through here, since Allays are a little bit fragile, and I don't really want them to die in the process, so I don't want to end up shooting them by mistake. But I can run at a bit of a sprint through this section. I can even hop and glide my way over here, and it looks like, well, at least one of the Allays is following me. I'm not sure where the other one ended up. Oh, no, there he is. Okay, fantastic. All right, I should have had more faith in them, I think, because at this point, they're actually pretty good at what they do. Now, let's get on through our nether portal real quick. Hopefully, the Allay over here is going to follow us, and one of them just went through the portal to spawn. Let's see if the other one is planning on doing it as well. There we go. I think he went through. Okay, fantastic. Now we should be able to walk on back to spawn, and we should have two Allays floating around at our base. Fantastic stuff. Now we can throw some stuff on the ground so that we know where they are, and the frogs are leaping around. I think it's probably time to go and get some sleep. So getting the Allays back to our base is not quite so much of a struggle as it is with some other mobs. Their pathing is a little bit confusing at first, but it seems to make sense, and they seem pretty fast when they want to be. They seem pretty good at following you. In fact, these ones are zooming around here right now, and if we throw a couple of items on the ground for them, they'll fly on over, collect them, and then toss them to me. Now, naturally, I don't want them to hold these fence posts for all that long, but what if, for example, we gave them some wheat, like this? Can I swap the item outright if I just give this guy some wheat? Okay, no. So I have to have an empty hand, take the item off of him, and convince him to hold this wheat. And now, let's see what happens if I break all of the wheat in my farm without trying to pick it up myself, like so. Okay, he's collected a couple of the wheat. Oh, brilliant. He's collecting a few at a time. And then once he's done looking for them, he should throw them all at me. That's really quite cool. And you know what? We could give this other one the wheat seeds and tell it to do the same thing. So anytime it notices wheat seeds lying on the ground, including when it's tried to throw them at me a second ago, it should deliver all of them directly to me. But what if we could have it deliver them directly to a composter? For now, I think we want to just work with one Allay at a time, so I'm going to leash this guy to the fence post, but they can actually stick within the radius of a lead, and if they end up finding a few items on the ground within that radius, they will still fly around and deliver them, so that's actually pretty clever. You can do the same with the one who's harvesting wheat over here, and wow, yeah, they do zip around at quite the speed. So Allays have a particular affinity for music. They like music a great deal, and a note block is actually a really important item when dealing with Allays, because if we play play a note block, you'll notice that very briefly there, we got to see the sound particle, kind of similar to a skulk sensor or the warden, detecting a player's presence. You see that little vibration particle traveling through the air and hitting both of these allays. If a note block plays nearby an allay, they choose that as their favorite note block, and they will drop off items at the note block when they collect them, instead of dropping them off at the player. Let's give this a quick try. Let's tune this up like so, and play that a couple of times. It does seem like they both paired to it. Now if I throw some wheat on the ground like so, the allay will fly around and collect it, and it'll throw it over there by the note block. So let's say we wanted to put a composter over here attached to a hopper. Now obviously right now the note block being right here means the hopper and composter setup is going to be in the ground. So that's a little bit awkward, but we could obviously rearrange that if we wanted to. Now if we hit this note block one time and throw some wheat on the ground like so, the allay is going to gather up all of that wheat, and once it realizes there's no more to gather, it's going to drop it all off over at the note block. Unfortunately, they're not all that accurate in terms of where you want them to throw it, but if the items are just dropped on the ground like that, they will continuously pick them up and try to throw them. So I think to use the allays to their fullest effect, we're actually going to have to push a hopper minecart into the same space as this note block, and that should be relatively simple to do since note blocks are pushable. We just need to place a rail on top of here. We're going to place the note block on top of that for now, so it's hovering kind of in midair. We're going to place the hopper minecart there and remove the rail, which will go down into this hopper and just sit there because of course it's not compostable. We're going to use a piston to push the note block down over the hopper minecart like so. Once the rails are removed, it should slide in there no problem. And now if you ring the note block a couple of times, the allays will know it's there. Now if we throw some of the wheat on the ground like so, the allay should deliver it to that note block and the hopper minecart will be able to pick it up. And there we go, all of the wheat goes into the hopper minecart and the composter starts churning away. And if we throw the remainder of this wheat on the ground here, the allay has now unpaired from the note block, so it's just going to throw all of the wheat back to me. We need to ring that note block one more time and then throw the wheat on the ground for the allay to pick the whole thing up. And it's picking up the whole stack of items that's collected there on the ground. It's going to throw them all one at a time into the hopper minecart, which will collect them all up pretty quickly. And from there, it's just a matter of emptying it all into the composter and collecting our bone meal. So the Allays throws are not always accurate. You can't always predict them. They're not always going to come from the same side. So I really think the hopper minecart is going to be a necessity for collecting the items that the Allay is throwing around. It's not going to be 100% accurate necessarily, but the hitbox of the hopper minecart is large enough that it should collect anything the Allay throws in this general area. Not to mention the fact that we could set up this note block to ring on a timer so that every so often the Allay's interest in that note block could be refreshed, and it'd effectively be like making sure that the Allay is always tethered to this note block and will always drop stuff off here instead of trying to find a player to do it. But if you want to know what I'm actually going to use these two for, here's my answer. Tree farming. I think when it comes to manual tree farming, Allays are frankly going to be pretty darn cool, because let's take mangrove trees as an example. I've been farming a bunch of those recently. We plant a mangrove propagule, we bone meal it, it grows into a massive tree, and what we really want is the wood on the inside of that. Since I don't want to waste any of the leaves, I've been silk touching them with a hoe, obviously because the hoe has so much more durability than something like shears, and I've been composting all of them. But what if that could happen automatically in the background? I've got my composter set up over here, but I'm going to throw a hopper minecart on top of that. And by the way, hopper minecarts, when you break them now, stay as hopper minecarts instead of splitting into a hopper and a minecart. And we've got enough iron that we can craft minecarts whenever we want them. I don't think I ever really broke down a hopper and a minecart to get one or the other item out of it. So I think that's a really cool change that's just happened in Minecraft 1.19. We're going to do the same thing we did before, where we push a note block down on top of that hopper minecart. And now, if we ring the note block, the Allays should register that as their favorite note block, and they'll come and drop off anything that they're collecting over here in that hopper minecart. Then, having silk touched one set of mangrove leaves, we're going to give one of those to the Allay. And if we ring that note block, the Allays around here are going to know to drop off all of the items that they find at that note block, meaning that this Allay is going to pick up and compost the mangrove leaves. Now, it did kind of mess up the basketball throw there, so I'm thinking that the composting setup is going to have to be lower to the ground, because it seems like, yep, there we go, it ended up getting it in there eventually, but these Allays are going to have to throw the items downwards, and they don't tend to float up above these things, so we're probably going to have to position our composting setup in the ground somewhere. But now with our hoe in hand, we should just be able to strip out all of the leaves here, and the Allay is going to zoom around after a couple of seconds and start collecting them all up for us. Once it's done with that, it's going to yeet them all at the note block, and hey, most of those went in. Not a bad start. But the second Allay here has a different job, and that is to collect up a bunch of scaffolding, because I use scaffolding to get to the top of big trees like this all the time. It saves on fireworks, and a lot of the time it makes sense to take the trees down, basically from the top of the canopy down, and leave just the wood. But eventually, once I'm done with that, I want to collect all of the scaffolding up, and the big problem is when I take the scaffolding down, sometimes bits of it get stuck up in the branches, and sometimes bits and pieces of it just end up on the ground. Maybe they end up despawning. Not anymore, because the Allay can deliver all of that scaffolding back to you, making sure that you always walk home with as much scaffolding as you brought in. And I like that as an idea. I think that can be really cool. Now, obviously, we need to keep the Allay around, and while it's not going to be a problem for it to just hover around while we have this mangrove tree farming session, I think it's probably going to be best for the scaffolding Allay to stay leashed up here, and then we'll unleash it when it's ready to collect all the scaffolding for us at the end of one tree farming session. In the meantime, I'm going to reorient some of the note block setup here so that it's closer to the ground and the Allay doesn't miss too much of the time. And we can also set up a timer that's going to activate the note block every so often, making sure that the Allay stays connected to that note block. And I think as far as a slow clock for this note block goes, this should be a fairly simple setup for one. It's not going to quite refresh the Allay often enough, but we have a third trick that we can employ here, which is going to help us out. In the meantime, though, this daylight sensor should change signal output, the power reading there on the right-hand side under targeted block. It should change that every minute or so throughout the day. It's obviously going to change a little bit more as the sun sinks towards the horizon, and each time the power dips, it's going to activate this observer because it's changing the block state of the daylight detector effectively. When that happens, the note block will ring like that, and it will reattach the Allay to the note block. In the meantime, what we're going to do while we're up here farming all of the mangrove wood is make sure our inventory is full of other stuff. We're going to use the scaffolding to get up here into the canopy of the tree, but then I'm going to fill the remainder of my inventory with scaffolding, except for one slot, which if I dig down a little bit, we're going to fill with the mangrove logs themselves. That way we're collecting mangrove wood in one slot of our inventory, and that can expand to multiple slots of the inventory if we wanted to. We just need to stack the scaffolding in there. So my inventory is pretty much full, and I can't pick up the mangrove leaves at all. That, of course, is the job of our Allay. The Allay is going to whiz around collecting all of the leaves here and is throwing them to me right now, but that doesn't matter because my inventory is full of other stuff, and every time it hears the note block, it's going to decide to drop those off down at the note block instead. And there it goes, dropping them all off to be composted, and it managed to throw most of them in there, but those mangrove leaves that get left on top, yep, he's going to pick those up and drop them in the composter. Fantastic. In the meantime, I can spend my time up here collecting all of the stuff that I care about, and everything I don't care about is going to get composted. So I think as far as the system goes for using the Allays, this is not something everyone's going to want to do, but it still seems like a pretty smart thing, and it's just one example of the ways Allays can be used to help with automation of sorts, I guess. I love the way they throw stuff at the same sort of location, but they kind of fly past as they do it, so they're leaving a stream of items, and it's all going into the same spot. It's really quite clever. If we wanted to, we could even switch the scaffolding Allay to pick up the mangrove propagules for us, and that way we could make sure that we don't lose any of these more valuable saplings. Let's give that one the propagule and watch it whiz around, collecting up all of the other ones that have dropped on the ground from these leaves. It's not going to pick them fresh off the tree, but as the leaves decay, now that I've removed most of the wood, we'll find that it picks up any that drop on the ground naturally, and it should just throw them either at us, or alternatively, at this point, it might end up throwing them into the composter. But that's fine because more bone meal means we can automatically grow some more propagules anyway. Perhaps when we don't want the Allays to interact with it anymore, we can mute the note block by putting a block over the top of it. And that shouldn't play a sound the Allays can hear anymore, so they'll just be able to drop stuff off at the player instead of at the note block. It'll also physically prevent them dropping off stuff here as well, seeing as the easiest way to get stuff into this hopper minecart, although I think it is still possible from the side, is to throw something onto the top of the block. Then once we're all done with the scaffolding, we can take the mangrove propagule back from that Allay, we can give it the scaffolding block, and then I can just walk away, knowing that the Allay is going to grab all of the scaffolding for me, including one that's got stuck up there in the branches. There you go, he's figured out that it's up there, and there we go. Should be able to deliver that scaffolding right back to us. Thank you so much for the scaffolding. I can take that back off you, and we'll probably end up leashing this one to the fence post so they don't end up following me around everywhere. I like these little critters. They're not necessarily the most efficient way of doing something because obviously we have mechanical components for that, but they just add a little bit of life and fun to processes like this which can otherwise seem a little bit tedious. In a single-player world, it's nice to have help, and these folks are really quite helpful. And you can imagine that we'd want to get a few more Allays because the mangrove tree farming process can include a few other things. We could get sticks from the leaves as they decay. We could end up with somebody harvesting the mangrove roots, the moss carpet for us, and even the vines if we wanted to shear those and just leave them on the ground for an Allay to pick up. I think one of the most obvious examples of where an Allay could be useful, although it's a problem that I've already solved for this one down here, is amethyst geode farming. Because imagine that I haven't built this entire water tank around my amethyst geode, or even if I have, honestly, there are some sections in which, when we end up farming these amethyst crystals, the crystals get stuck on a block. They float up from the bottom, they get stuck underneath a block, or if you're farming one of these things without the water tank around it, you end up with crystals just floating on the tops of some of these blocks, and it's a pain to jump between them or have scaffold that goes all the way around them. You end up missing amethyst crystals, amethyst shards here and there as you are farming them. But what if an Allay could be flying around gathering up all of that stuff for you? And I think it's a really neat thing that an Allay can do that for you, so you don't miss those few amethyst shards, which, if you're mining them with fortune, could be up to 16. I think it's really cool just to imagine the possibilities with these guys, and they're really kind of like redstone in that way. I feel like they can be used for so much stuff that we could do manually in Minecraft, but honestly, I think it's kind of cool to have an alternative to that, and the Allays are that alternative. Or they're just one of a series of alternatives, basically. But I think we're going to go and track down a few more of these guys, because Pillager Outposts are not the only places you can find them. The other place we can find Allays is swimming into view right now, and this isn't the Woodland Mansion that I've raided before. This is a brand new Woodland Mansion that I actually found when I was searching the world for mangrove swamp biomes in the first episode that we did from Minecraft 1.19. So this is a fresh Woodland Mansion in chunks that hadn't been loaded before, and I believe even if they had, they'd probably have been reset when we trimmed chunks out of the world anyway. So in theory, if we can find one of the jail cell rooms inside of this Woodland Mansion, that might contain a bunch of Allays as well. It's not just the pillagers who have been capturing Allays, evidently they are wanted here at the Woodland Mansions as well, which kind of hints at potentially a connection between Allays and Vexes. The Allays do look like kind of more friendly versions of Vexes after all. So what do you folks think? Do you think maybe that the Evokers are capturing the Allays and turning them to the Pillagers' side? Or do you think maybe the Allays are Vexes who decided to rebel against their masters and turn good and decide to help players out? I don't know. There are potentially a whole bunch of reasons why the two of them could look kind of similar, and I'll leave that up to the lore folks out there to speculate. But personally, I just think it's cool that the two of them seem to be tangentially related. Even their names are actually kind of related, because Allay is sort of the opposite of Vex if you look at the actual meanings of the word. But it looks like we have a problem, because parts of this Woodland Mansion are already burning down. And I promise, despite what people tend to do here in Woodland Mansions, I have not done this. Clearly a lava lake has generated in the middle of this Woodland Mansion, so this is going to turn into a bit of a race against time. We've got a Bane of Arthropods 4 book. Honestly, that can burn with the rest of this structure. But there are some Allays in here. I can hear them. I think they're inside of this jail cell room, which is honestly a good thing because we need to let them out before they burn along with the rest of the mansion. The Vindicators outside are burning up. We've got one Allay on a lead, and I believe another one managed to escape somewhere else into the mansion. Let's give this one an emerald. Yes, there we go. Okay, so now the Allay is our friend. We can take this one outside. We might grab a fence post from inside the mansion so that we can leash it, and let's see if we can rescue any more Allays from this structure. I had no idea this mansion was going to burn down. This is kind of hilarious, and while we don't really need to care that much about the evoker drops, we could farm a few more raids if we wanted to do that. As of Minecraft 1.19, the current version that I'm playing in right now, Allays cannot really be farmed. They are unique mobs that you can only find in the world, and I expect if that other one has survived, we should be able to track it down once a little bit more of this structure is completely gone. It looks like there are actually 3 different cells, and there's an Allay in this one, so let's see if we can give this one, let's give it a white carpet, although that might potentially have it picking up some other stuff. There's another one right here. Let's give this one, oh, I don't know, rotten flesh. And let's now try and get these out of the Woodland Mansion without them burning alive, which would be a preferable outcome, I think. Come on, friends, this way. I know I've given you items that are probably all over the place inside of there, but let's get you attached to this fence post. Great, we've managed to capture 3 of them so far. Let's go back in. Oh my goodness, this place is a giant mess. There's so much that is just gone, and I don't see any more Allays flying around, so we may be able to get the rest of these. It's a good thing, actually, that they're inside these big cobblestone structures, because if something like this happens to one of your Woodland Mansions, the Allays inside are probably going to be safe, actually. Let's open this room up and see there is one in here. Let's give him a cobblestone wall and attach him to a lead. That way we should be able to drag him out of here, and then hopefully we'll be able to track down any more that might still be inside of here. All right, that is our 4th Allay all leashed up, and I know it looks like they're struggling right now, but trust me, they are better off out here than they are in there. I'm definitely hearing one around here somewhere. I don't know if it's inside one of the cells or not, but I'm hearing the noises. Is it in this one? Oh, wow, there are 2 that are left here in the corner. Okay, well, let's take this cauldron with us, and let's give you that one, and let's see if that other one who just flew out the door is still around. Yeah, it sounds like it made its way into here, so let's give you a cauldron as well, and that means 2 more Allays following us. Hopefully we shouldn't have any trouble with these 2 trying to find that item, because I don't think there are any more cauldrons in here. Let's be real, it doesn't look like there's much of anything in here, and oh gosh, one of our Allays is on fire. Help! Oh gosh, okay, well hopefully they're going to survive this trip out here, and we can dunk them in water if I can get a water bucket out of my hotbar. But one cool thing to know about Allays is that they actually have a regeneration effect built in. Because they're so valuable to players right now, and there isn't really a way of duplicating them in Minecraft 1.19, although there will be in 1.19.1, they've actually got a behind-the-scenes regeneration effect. So if you hit them occasionally, it's not going to result in a situation where, like, tapping one accidentally is going to kill it. But from a quick look around here, it looks like we have even more Allays back here, because they are all cooped up in these jail cells. I'm going to have to come back with a bunch more leads, because, man, those Allays are going to be so worth having. I think a Woodland Mansion is really going to be the best place to find them, because there's usually a couple of these jail structures inside of here. I managed to scrounge enough wool from the structure around here to make myself a bed, but gosh, I've only seen like 1 or 2 Vindicators, and then the whole place started falling down around me. Unbelievable. They were standing here in the remains of a Woodland Mansion, and a fire that I didn't even start. Oh, there's a Vindicator. And it's a real shame that the libraries in here had to go as well. Think of all the bookshelves. Oh, what a shame. But folks, I think I'd better get out of here, go and grab some more leads, and rescue the remainder of these Allays. I wonder what we're going to do with them all, but I think it's really exciting that we have all of them right here, and I think we might station them at different points around the world, collecting a few different types of resources for us. But at the very least, we've set them free from the captivity they found themselves in, and we'll do the same with the ones over there. Folks, I think that's where we're going to leave this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide, and oh gosh, bits of the Dark Oak Forest are now on fire as well. Folks, thank you so much for watching this episode. My name has been Pixlriffs. Please don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more, and I'll see you folks soon. Take care. Bye for now.